Hello, today I'm making a card using the Peaceful Peonies collection from Couture Creations. Now I can't show the finished card because I haven't put it together yet. I've only got one piece of each of these beautiful papers, so I can't do one that I've made earlier. But also I need to make sure that foiling I'm going to do on here works first time. Okay, I haven't got a second shot at this. So let me give you some idea what I'm going to be doing with this card. So I've got a 7x7 card base and I've got some pink metallic card. Okay. And that the pink metallic is just from my stash. So, you know, whatever you've got that might look nice for this. Okay, and I've just worked it into the colour scheme as I go along because I'm going to have some die cut flowers, and these are dies in the Peaceful Peonies collection. So I'm going to have some flowers. I've got some cut foil and embossed dies, and I've used some pearlescent white card and foiled those in gold for this to kind of go with the gold of the flowers. But these don't have to be foiled. You can do these with ink instead. Okay, I've got, again from the collection, you get kind of trellis dies, and there's an oval piece that can go in the middle of these as well, but I've not used it on this card. So you get the left and the right, but the kind of a trellis arch or trellis aperture, and I've decided to widen it slightly. And then I'm going to use this, which is one of the cut and foil and embossed dies with the collection, and I foiled this on my pink card in the gold, and again that works in with the colour scheme. So whatever card you're using for that matte layer, that I've then repeated that in my design. So, and that's going to go at the top of the arch so that it looks like it's all joined up. It's like an arbour. So that's going to be across the top, and then in this corner down here I want to foil with this hot foil stamp. Okay, so it's not got a cutting edge. Okay, so I'm foiling it onto my paper. I'm going to foil that in gold. So this to me is the tricky bit of making this card. Okay, so let me put my card blank to one side, and my paper I've cut down to a 6.5 inch square. It only needed trimming a tiny amount around the edges, just to make it exactly 6.5 inches square. And I was in two minds which side to use, because the other side is beautiful as well, but I decided in the end to go with this one that's got the all over pattern. So this lovely hot foil stamp, and it really is beautiful. It's got lots of quite broad flat areas, okay, and that kind of hot foil stamp is quite vulnerable to having bits of foil missed when you do it, because what can happen is when you put your shims on, now I've got shims that I tend to reuse and reuse my shims most of the time, but not for this card. So let me get some out that have been in use for a long time. I'm going to bring it right up close to the camera and see if you can see the texture on it. So let me zoom the camera in all the way and then get it to focus. There we are. So there's some odd bits of foil, but you can also see there's all sorts of dips and dents in the card surface, and that's where I've used them lots of times, and they just keep picking up the texture. Now if I'm foiling sentiments or something with sort of narrow lines, that doesn't matter at all. The pressure just smooths it out where it needs to be smooth, and it doesn't affect the foiling. But when I've got something like this, as I say, with these lovely flat areas, then the texture of it could get carried through. So I've been practicing with this a bit, and these are shims I've only used a couple of times. Let me go back in. And you can see the texture they've picked up. Okay, so to foil this, I've cut myself a new set of card shims, and I've got some paper that's about the same weight that I practiced on because this is not card, it is paper. I think it's about a 120 GSM. It's a nice quality paper, but it's not as thick as card. So I have cut myself a new set of shims, and I worked out by testing that with this thickness of paper that 4 shims seem to work best. I might get a little bit of overfoiling at the top, but I can remove that. If I get bits of foil that are missed, I can't really put them in. So 4 new shims, and I've just cut those from some 250 GSM smooth white card. Okay, so new set of shims, and then I need to position my hot foil stamp, and to do that I like to use a stamp press magnet, and I'm just going to lay my hot foil stamp in the corner where I want it. Okay, decide, yeah, I want it kind of that way. It will need to lean in a bit if the bottom's going to be straight, so I think leaning in looks quite nice as well. That's it. So that needs to go in the corner there, just in from the edge, and then I put my magnet on the back, and I can still adjust this if I want to, but I can pick this up and the hot foil stamp doesn't fall off, it doesn't move at all. Okay, and these are just magnets that you'd use with a stamp press. You can buy spare ones, and I've wrapped them in some masking tape so that I've got a handle on them to be able to pick them up after I put the hot foil stamp down on my GoPress and foil. So let me get my GoPress and foil over. So I'm just going to pull the actual hot plate part off the base, bring it in front of the camera, because my electric cable doesn't quite reach far enough. Okay, so I want to foil this. Now I'm going to put this so that I'm coming down it, so I'm on the thickest bit first, and I'm just going to put that down there and line my paper up with the corner. Okay, and you're probably thinking, oh, but what about the foil? That comes in a minute. So I'm just going to put my finger on there, and this is where the masking tape comes. I just slide my magnet off while I'm holding the hot foil stamp down with my finger. Now that does start to get a bit warm, so don't take too long. If it does, you can just pick the whole thing up and let it cool down and organise yourself and start again. Okay, so that's going to go on there. I need to make sure I keep the paper the right way up. But you're also thinking, it's not going to fit through my die cutting machine. Well, it's sticking out the edge of the GoPress and foil over on this side. Now I've got a wide die cutting machine, so that's not a problem for me. I can just leave it sticking out the edge. But if you've got a narrow machine, then because this design where the trellis comes up this side, you can trim your paper to the width that will fit your GoPress and foil, and then it's quite easy to hide the join when we put the card together. Okay, so that needs to warm up. Okay, I need to make sure I get my paper the right way round, so it's going to go into that corner. So what I'm going to do is on the back, I'm going to just put a pencil mark. I'm going to say TR for top right. Okay, so I know that that bit is what needs to go over there. Okay, so we just need to let that warm up, and while I'm waiting I can show you the cut, foil and embossed dies that I've used for the leaves and for the spray of flowers across the top. So there we are, that's that one. And then that is that one. And these have these raised parts for doing the foiling, but they also have a cutting edge around the outside that cuts the piece out at the same time. And you use those with the GoPress and foil conversion plate. Let me just grab mine. And that's the thick metal plate from from Couture Creations. It actually says on it, just here, metal conversion plate. Okay, so if you're not sure if what you've got's a metal conversion plate or a metal shim, the conversion plate says metal conversion plate on it. The shim is much thinner. Okay. Right, so I think my dye is nice and hot. I can just feeling that. It's nice and hot. So let's pull this out. Okay, so now I need to add my foil. Now I've trimmed my foil to size earlier. For quickness while I'm videoing. So that is my foil to go on there. And then I need my very pretty paper. And I've got my mark that says top right to go up here. And I'm just going to line it up with the plastic surround. And then I'm going to use a little bit of low tack tape to hold it still. Okay, so then I've got my card shims. Now I've got 4 thicknesses here because that's what I worked out earlier that I needed. Okay, so those are going to all go on where my hot foil stamp is. I seem to have managed to cut these wonky. That's it. So make sure they are completely covering your hot foil stamp. Close the lid. Now I'm just going to make sure that is hot enough because I've pulled it off the base while I was doing that. Normally when I'm just foiling for myself, I work with it on the base and then I know it stayed hot. But when I've pulled it off and been talking about what I'm doing, obviously I take a bit longer and I just like to make sure it's hot. So let me move the camera around the die cutting machine. There we are. This won't take a minute just to finish warming up. So rolling nice and slowly. And I can feel when I've got past where the hot foil stamp is. And then because it's wider at the bottom, I'm just going to go part way again. So just to make sure this foils. I'm not going to come all the way to the top. It's a bit like when you've got a large intricate die. You want to make sure it's cut through when you're die cutting, but the foiling, you just want to make sure your pressure has transferred the foil. There, so let's see what we've got. So I can see my shim has picked up patterns from my lid, because that's quite scratched. Well, I'll pick that up. It's left a good impression in my paper, but that's fine. And my foil is adhered. Looks really nicely. Okay, so I'm going to take that off and leave it to cool. And for the ready for the next thing, I'm going to put my conversion plate on. Okay, and then that can be warming up while we're doing this. So let's just carefully peel my tape. Now, if I've got tape, I like to peel it from the edge that's actually on the card rather than from where the edge of the paper is, and I find it's less likely to tear my paper that way. I'll take that off. Let's peel the foil and see how we did. There, so I can see from the waist that foiled beautifully. And I have got a few bits of overfoiling, but before I start doing anything drastic, I'm just going to get a brush and see if they all just brush away. Just a soft paintbrush. And sometimes you get bits of foil that just kind of stuck to the bit of foil next to them. There, okay. So, as I say, I've used new shims, and I'll keep the shims, and they'll possibly get used with other projects. But it's good to, and you can see that was the bottom one, and it's actually picked up a bit of ink off the other side of the paper. But then, you know, that one's quite smooth, so they can be reused. Of course, the other alternative, if you do get an odd bit of mist foil, there's a butterfly that goes on this card, and you can, you know, you can put more butterflies. And you know, if you get an odd bit that's going to show that you're not happy with, you can disguise it. I've got a little bit of overfoiling just up there. So let me just grab my creative detailer. I should perhaps got that out earlier. Now this has got a rubber that spins, and it's just a neat, really easy way of removing overfoiling. You just go very gently wherever the overfoiling is, and it just kind of tickles it away. Yeah, but do be gentle with it. A couple of bits are there as well. So yeah, if you get any bits of overfoiling, you can just remove them, as I say, with a creative detailer or sand eraser. So that's my card. So let's see if we can get some of this together. In fact, I'm going to stop the camera and put this bit together, and then I can show you where the next bits fit. Okay, so bear with me. Okay, so I've got my paper matted and layered onto my card blank. So far so good. And one of the things I found with foiling is that you do really need to think about where you're going to want foil before you start sticking things down. Okay, no good sticking down your mats and layers and thinking, oh, would be nice to have something foiled on there. It's too late at that point. Or if you do it, you're likely to get the impression of the hot foil stamp carrying through onto your card blank. So my plate here is nice and warm, so I need my die, and I've got a piece of card. So you could put your die onto the metal plate and leave it to warm up, and then put your foil and your card on. But I find sometimes things move, you know, just with the force of pulling the plate off the base and putting it in the die cutting machine. Sometimes things slide, and I don't always end up with my die and my foil and my card lined up as they should. And sometimes I end up with a bit of the die cut missing, and sometimes I end up with a bit that isn't foiled. So I'm just going to stick this down with a couple of bits of low tack tape. Let's get my rubbish out of the way. And then I can put the whole thing. So I've got my card, my foil with the shiny side up, and then my die with its cutting edge down. And then I'm going to flip that over to put it onto the GoPress. So I'm just going to put that down on there and close my lid and leave that to warm up. So obviously that's going to take a few minutes to warm up, and while that's doing that, I'm going to carry on building the card. So bear with me again. Okay, so my GoPress and foil has had a couple of minutes to warm up. I've started sticking things down on the card. I just wanted to check the position of my sentiment where I was putting my leaf. So let's roll this through the die cutting machine. I always end up going in both directions, and that's mostly because reaching around the back of my die cutting machine to get my GoPress out the back is quite difficult. So let's pull this off. So I'm just going to carefully grab this with my, actually I'm going to grab my fingers, but I can use my pick and lift, because the conversion plate doesn't stick to the magnet. It's obviously made out of something that doesn't stick to magnets, so you can use your pick and lift to pick things up from it when they're hot. So let's see how this is done. So I'm going to just take my tape off. It cools down quite quickly, but if your fingers are sensitive to the heat, just give it a minute to cool down before you start trying to handle it. Okay, but that's only just warm. So it doesn't matter if I've got overfoiling from there, and that's my foil has it's got a nice hole cut in it. Okay, and then I need to just wiggle this out of here. Like that, and then I just sort of manipulate it a little bit. The foil will start to come away from its carrier sheet, and then I can peel that away. There we are. There we are. So that's my foil piece for the top of my arch. Okay, so there we are. So you've seen the foiling with the hot foil stamp, which is this one. Okay, no cutting edge, broad areas that foil. So I use some fresh card shims. And then I've used my cut foil and emboss die, and it is an emboss, to foil this. Now, to say, you don't have to use these with foil. You can use them with ink. The cut foil and emboss dies you can. So just bear with me a moment. Oh. There's somewhere here I've got a leaf, a set of leaves. So that's a set of leaves, right? I've just inked the cut foil and emboss die and rolled it through my die cutting machine. So you can use them with inks as well, and they're great because you get quite a lot of detail without lots of fiddly bits to stick down. So let's look at how this card's going to go together. Now, I like to use like a mixed media gel when I'm doing die cuts and flowers and things like that aren't going to be flat, or that I'm sticking down on bits that aren't flat. So that's what I use, but obviously glue of your choice really. So let me just get my messy mat back and my packet of bits I prepared earlier. So I shall need my flowers for the top. Let me just get this positioned where the camera can see it nicely. There we are. So I've got a sentiment here. This is also in the collection, Follow Your Dreams. Get able to focus on that. And that I've cut and folded it using one of the Modern Essentials cut foil and embossed dies. It's the bracket frame. It's just it's a nesting set, so it comes in lots and lots of sizes. You get them all in the set, but I've just used that small one because that was going to fit nicely within my kind of arch. So I've done a sentiment, and then to kind of decorate the sentiment, let me just tip the ruler. There we are. So I've cut, this honeycomb was with a previous collection, with the butterfly garden collection. So just a little kind of tuck-in piece to go on the edge of my sentiment. Okay, so I just need to glue that in place. I think I'm going to glue it to the sentiment and then put the sentiment on foam pads. No, let me glue it down and then put the sentiment on foam pads on top. That would look better. So I just need to figure out where that needs to go. That's it, about there. So glue on the back of here. Just want to get the sentiment in place because then it helps with positioning the flowers. Let's just slide that under there. Doesn't have to be straight, it's just a little bit of extra decoration. And it's actually one die cut that I've cut in half this. There we are. Right up there. And then my sentiment will go there. Let me just grab some foam pads. Probably more foam pads than it really needed, but let's try and get this in. It's going to tuck under that leaf. There we are, in the middle of my arch. There. Okay, and then, as I say, I'm going to use some gel adhesive. This comes in a big pot, but I decant it. You might want to use something like a pin flare gel, or something you'd use for mixed media. Big blob in the middle there. This on the outside. Okay, I'm just going to put that in the middle. I'm not going to press it hard so that it can look like it's kind of floating there. Right. And then I need to figure out where I'm putting the rest of my leaves and flowers. So maybe I'll do this and then I'll show you at the end. Okay, thank you. Okay, so here's the finished card. So the glue is still wet, so I'm handling it quite carefully. So I've stuck down my leaves and set 3 flowers over this side, and some of these smaller leaves, they're also part of the collection. And all the dies and hot foil stamps and everything I've used, all the Couture Creations products, will be listed on my blog post. So have a look at the blog post that goes with this video to find the details of all the items used, with all their names and their product codes, so that you can find out exactly what I've used. So where this comes up here and the flowers come nearly to the bottom, this would easily disguise if you'd needed to cut your paper down to fit your GoPress. A couple of extra bits of foliage, you'd never see the join, and the same at the bottom, just a couple of extra bits of foliage. So there we are, my finished card. Thank you for watching.